they apply it, saying that to themselves, well, the belief that Jesus was physically risen from the grave, it's a nice idea. It's a nice idea that you believe this. You'll most likely, because you have this naive hope, you'll live a moral life and and act in a way in order to sort of get that resurrection body that this hope promises. And these individuals that view Christianity and this Christian hope as a noble lie are not motivated to, let's say, make us see that it is a lie in their view, because it makes us act right, makes us act like as we ought to. We live moral lives. So why tell us this is a lie? This isn't true. But before I explode this understanding, I want to point out that this whole depiction of the Christian hope is based on a wrongful understanding of what the gospel is all about. It's based on understanding that Christianity is all about getting people to behave well. That's not what Christ came to earth for. Because if that was true, if we could in some way modify our behavior so that we could be part of God's family, then there's no point for Christ to come here and die and suffer. Moving on, what does the noble lie understand? What is it about the noble lie's understanding of hope? Besides being incredibly condescending, this understanding applied to Christianity, there's other significant problems with this. The first and foremost of this is that the Apostle Paul doesn't leave this understanding open either to the Christians or to us today. Remember, he writes in the beginning of this passage, "Now, brothers, I want to remind you of the gospel I preached to you, which you received and on which you have taken your stand. By this gospel you are saved, if you hold firmly to the word I preached to you, otherwise you have believed in vain." So he's giving them a tradition. Clearly he's saying, this is a tradition that I'm giving to you. "For what I received I passed on to you as of first importance, that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the third day according to the Scriptures, and that he appeared to Peter and then to the 12. After that, he appeared to more than 500 of the brothers at the same time, most of whom are still living, though some have fallen asleep. Then he appeared to James, then to all the apostles, and last of all, he appeared to me also, as to one abnormally born." Commentators will tell us that what we see here is a tradition, a creedal tradition that Paul is citing. And why that's significant is that this meant that this creedal tradition had to have been formed before Paul wrote this letter. So when Paul was writing this, before he wrote this creed down to share with the Corinthians, it means that those who had been present at these events had shared what they had seen and what they had heard. And they had developed all this testimony and developed it into a creed, which means that this is all had taken place within 20 years. Within 20 years of Christ's actual death and resurrection. Just kind of give us a frame of mind. It'd be similar to us trying to think of, all right, what happened 20 years ago? Well, the Berlin Wall fell 20 years ago. And so we could, like they could at this time, we could ask someone, say a German that was there, say, what happened? What did you see? And that is precisely what's going on here. In fact, Paul invites his readers to do that very thing, to ask about it. When he tells them in the middle of this beginning passage, after that he appeared to more than 500 of the brothers at the same time, most of whom are still living, though some have fallen asleep. Or in other words, some are dead, but most of them are alive. You don't have to take my word for it. Go check this. This really, really happened. Why is this significant? Why is this point so very important? Well, it places those who deny the historicity of Christ's resurrection in a very awkward place. It's not the reasonable, rational person who denies Jesus' resurrection. A reasonable person believes a credible, vetted historical account, and that's what we have here. Hence, to claim that Jesus' bodily resurrection is a lie, a noble lie, is to reveal one's own irrationality, not the credulity or the gullibility of those who believe it. Returning to our guiding question this morning, what is the nature of hope? I want us to dig in to this understanding that it's all about pie in the sky by and by. That this understanding that this hope is to disconnect us from our present circumstances and just put all of our desires and our desires for freedom, our desires for whole healing and all that into the future as a future hope. It doesn't have to, we don't have to do anything today. I want to address that understanding now. One of the debates that is continuing to rage within scholarship, within American history, religious history, is Christianity's relationship to the slave trade, particularly in this nation. One of the questions or arguments that is bantered about has to do with this very idea, this very understanding of hope. That Christianity, in all actuality, is what they argue, was just another tool for the slave masters to keep the slaves in their place. It led the slaves to become complacent, to accept their lot in life, and not do anything about it. Much like the noble lie that I just described earlier, this is the way things are for this world, but it's going to be all different later. But so we don't have to worry about engaging in this world. That's what they say this hope did. A famous playwright, William Shakespeare writes, "The miserable have no other medicine, but only hope." This is very much similar to the old Marxian idea that religion is the opiate of the masses. It makes the masses easily controlled because they have simply given in to the structures and how they are, because they realize, well, what I should really value is the next life and not this life. This life, anything can happen. There's no reason to fight against injustice now. What I submit to you is that this is actually a distortion of true Christian hope. It's a false understanding, because Christian hope is properly understood only in light of our place in God's redemptive history of this world. We live in the already, but not yet. And the distortion comes, this distortion of Christian hope comes, when we put too much of an emphasis on the not yet. It's true that we don't have our resurrection bodies, which are free from all suffering and sin. It hasn't happened. Not yet.